It's your boy Luke here for our round 2 prize picks preview. I'm looking a little bit like a lobster. Got a ton of sun today out there at the Honda Classic. Today's picks on DFS and for prize picks went pretty well. In DFS, we're in the top 10% of most of our contests in our single entry. And here on prize picks, yesterday we went 2-1-2, that being 2 pushes and 1 loss, and of course the 2 wins, which did lead us to a profitable day. But if Louis Oosthuizen hadn't blown it the way that he had today, it really could have been something special. So that makes it 3 slates in a row where we have only missed on 1 prop. So we're obviously trending in the right direction. Just hoping to piece it all together for that 12 or even 8x parlay that we've been trying to target. Today's props, a little bit of a review for that. We did end up hitting on the Brooks Koepka under 4.5 shots on hole 3. We also ended up hitting over there with the over, I guess it is, for Nick Watney on the bear trap. Obviously, we faded him. That was a difficult stretch of golf holes. And of course, Nick Watney, not the best player to begin with. Our 1 loss was Louis, as I said, in our 2 pushes, where the birdies are better for Tommy Fleetwood and also the Russell Knox green regulation. And both of those could have very easily been wins. I mean, Russell Knox had 3 or 4 fringes and played for the slate. And we also had Tommy Fleetwood, who birdied 2 of his last 3 holes to push. So it really was close to being an epic day, but looking forward to Friday. Of course, going to be there once again in person. And boy, if you guys thought sweating prize picks online and on the shot tracking app was fun, sweating them in person is an entirely different experience, particularly with some of those single hole stuff. It's a lot of fun. Of course, when you're sitting there able to follow the group, kind of see how your guys are doing live, it's a completely different experience. But with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the picks here for round 2. All right, on the screen, you can see the data golf profile for the first day from the Honda. And you'll see the scoring average was 1.28 shots over par. That is slightly worse than what we saw last year. The weather in round 1 was just about as average as we're going to get. The wind was in the 10 to 15 mile an hour range for most of the day, but there were a few spurts, particularly towards the morning, and also from right around 12 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, where the wind completely went away. I mean, it died down. It was like the fan was turned off, that type of thing. And you saw scoring absolutely skyrocket during both of those windows. That's why if we split this by wave, you'll see the morning wave did have a slightly easier time scoring than in the afternoon, which of course is usual for the PGA Tour, but that was especially so the case with some of the wind in play today. And if we take a little bit of a look at the weather for tomorrow, you'll see that that is a similar trend. As early as 9 a.m., we're going to have 9 to 15 mile an hour winds, and right around midday into the afternoon, it's going to get extremely bad. 9 to 20 miles an hour towards midday, and right around 2 p.m., you're looking at right around 21 mile an hour winds. And the further we get into the afternoon, they start to die down right around 5 or 6 as the sun starts to go down, as you'll typically see in South Florida. But 16, 20 miles an hour the whole way, pretty much throughout most of the day, especially there in midday. So first off, the guys that are teeing off later in the morning, that might get caught by some of that late morning wind, might fall into some trouble, but especially so the guys that are starting early in the afternoon. And while typically we get morning afternoon wave splits, it's more kind of in the middle, right? The guys that are out there late in the morning are also going to be hit by some of that wind, and some of the guys getting out there early in the afternoon are going to get hit. Whereas the guys that are teeing off late in the afternoon wave, the guys that will be teeing off right around 1, 2 p.m., you can see the wind still there at 2 p.m., but from 3 p.m. onward, they have pretty solid conditions, right? 18 miles an hour goes down to 16, and by the time they'll be finishing up right around 5, 6 p.m., you see over here at 6, it goes down to 14. So that's only 5 to 6 miles an hour, but when it's sustained like what you get down here in South Florida, particularly at a course like PGA National that is so wide open, has no protection from trees, it makes a huge difference. So in terms of the scoring, we saw it played, again, 1.28 shots above par. I would expect it to be closer to 1.5 shots over par. In the morning, it'll probably play closer to this 1.3 that we saw for the entire day. And then, of course, in the afternoon, when that wind ratchets it up, when we have more firm, more fast conditions, you'll probably see it play closer to maybe 1.75 or even 2 shots over par. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about some of the props we're targeting. And because I liked the sweat today, following these groups, especially some of the single hole props, you'll see that a lot of the things that we're targeting are along those lines, because of course this is the car that I'm entering for tomorrow. That's always the picks that I'm giving you here. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on, especially from a sweat perspective. At the end, I will talk about some of the strokes props that I like. Also, some of the birdies are better. A few of the other categories that I have my eye on as well. So first and foremost, we do have Matthew Wolff on this list, and it's almost a meme at this point. The guy shot 81 on Thursday. You would think that I'd be fading him in this circumstance, but he's also the only quality player that they went out there and put for this hole 3 stat. Hole 3 was an absolute goldmine today when it came to birdies or better. You saw guys, regardless of skill set, pretty much go out there and get a free stroke under par. And of course, at a golf course that is playing over par, that is important to make sure you secure. The issue with Matthew Wolff, and the only reason he's on this list alongside people like Brian Harman, Gary Woodland, Nick Watney, especially Garrick Higgo, Ryan Palmer, the reason why he's the best player by far on this list is that he shot that 81, 11 over par. The one thing with Matthew Wolff is that the best part of his game, no doubt about it, is the par 5 scoring. He's one of the better drivers on the PGA Tour. Also with his long irons from right around 200 to 175 yards. That bucket right there, the long iron bucket, he's one of the best in all the PGA Tour as well. So that's why back there in 2021, also as a rookie in 2020, he was top 5 in par 5 scoring. If you take a look at the shots gained approach numbers from that 175 to 200 bucket, he's also been top 5 every single year on tour. So that's why I like going back to it. Again, the price is right. There's a reason why he's on this board. If he would have gone out there today and shot even close to even par, if he shot just 1 or 2 over par, we probably don't see him on this hole 3 bucket, right? There's a reason why they're only offering the guys that they are here, because it was such an easy hole in round 1. In fact, over 50% of the field did make birdie or better at the third hole. So we are taking the optimal play here. In terms of the pin location, it's very similar to what we saw in round 1. In round 1, it was tucked on the right towards the middle of the green. This time it's on the right side of the green, same spot, but a little bit further back. It's about 5 paces back from where it was today. Though it is on another tier of the green, these guys are able to reach into, much like a Matthew Wolff should be able to with his length. Of course, that long iron ability that I was talking about before shouldn't be a problem to make a 4 at the very least, if not make a 3, right? He has a legit chance to make an eagle at that hole, but either way, all we need is the birdie there, and I think that's a pretty safe bet. Next up, we're going to go over to the hole 6 shots. So for hole 6 shots, you're going to see I'm taking the over on Nick Watney. This is a par 4, believe it or not, so it's not a par 5. So yes, even though the line is that over par, this is by far the hardest hole in the golf course, at least when it comes to birdies or better versus bogeys or worse. There were more bogeys or worse made at this hole than pretty much any other hole at the Honda Classic. There's not really water in play. There is on the left side, but not many people are going to hit into that water. Most people are going to bail out right, where there's a large mound, pretty deep rough, and plenty of bunkers. So pretty much no matter where you hit it on this hole, unless you happen to hit the perfect drive, you're going to end up in some type of trouble. It's also 480 yards. It plays directly back into the wind. And the green, because it's set up to be a par 5, is one of the hardest on the entire golf course. Of course, if you're able to reach it in 3, they wanted to add at least a little bit of defense to that hole. Again, this is supposed to be one of the most difficult golf courses in the world. So taking the over on Nick Watney makes a lot of sense. I mean, first off, he's not somebody who's relatively long off the tee. He gets it out there right around 290, 300 yards into the wind, probably looking at closer to 280 yards, which means he's looking at about a 200-yard iron shot onto one of the hardest greens of this entire golf course, also with a front pin location that is just over a bunker. In general, I think that most players on this list are going to make bogey or worse at this hole, like many of the players did today, but especially somebody like Nick Watney that doesn't necessarily fit the mold here. Next up, we're going to go over to the next category, which is hole 18 shots. And you can see a lot of the elite players that we wanted to target, of course, on hole 3 are over here at hole 18 because it is a much more difficult hole. Instead of going sideways into the wind, it goes directly into the wind. It's also longer and also has water in play. So definitely a lot more hazards that can really hold players back from making a birdie at this hole. Brooks Koepka, though, was able to overcome that today, made a birdie of himself. And the one thing that I do like about this hole, especially for the last round, is that the hole location is much more accessible. It's in the front left bowl. If you end up laying up on this hole, it is going to make it an extremely easy hole to get a birdie. But if you're also somebody like Brooks Koepka, who can easily reach into and can easily just bail out to the left, end up a little bit short left, pitch up and down, get a birdie, it should be an easy birdie for him tomorrow. So I'm really counting on that. It's probably my favorite prop on the slate, just because with his length off the tee, of course, his ball striking acumen, he's going to get on that green, get it within 10 feet for birdie. It's just whether he makes that putt. And of course, we like Brooks Koepka's chances of making that putt a whole lot more than pretty much anyone else in the world. And now finally, the last prop that I'm taking a look at. And of course, because we are taking 2 unders and then 3 overs, we will be getting the 12.5x multiplier for this play, which is something that I also like for doing this in live sweat. But we're going to be taking the over on both of these guys for the bear trap. Of course, it is a par 3, par 4, and par 3 from holes 15 to 17 at PGA National. By far the hardest 3-hole stretch on all of the PGA Tour. And the real issue here is with that wind that we talked about before. Again, it's pretty much going to be the entire day. The morning wave and the afternoon wave are both going to be hit by it. These holes especially, 15 through 17, that are extremely exposed to the wind, get even more difficult. So somebody like a Dylan Wu that's already not a very good tour player to begin with. I mean, if we were to power rank the players, it'd probably be in at least maybe the 100 range at the very most, if not like 125 to 150 range. And Danny Willett, other than the Masters win on the PGA Tour, is utterly atrocious. I mean, the guy shows up like once a year, maybe twice a year at max. Other than that, is consistently trunk slamming. So these two players are very similar to somebody like a Nick Watney that we took the prop on today. Unfortunately, they took Nick Watney away from us. We're not able to bet him here for the bear trap once again. He bogeyed one hole, ended up double bogeying the next, so we very clearly ended up hitting the over there. Going to somebody like a Dylan Wu or even a Danny Willett that are clearly just lower tier players than the guys that are priced around him, or who are we going to be going with? A few other guys I would consider, at least I consider going to somebody like a Tommy Fleetwood, but that's probably about it, right? Maybe Patrick Reed, just because he hasn't been hitting it all that well. These two players are clearly worse than a lot of their competition, so I think they're the guys to go ahead and target in that category. And now that we've gone through my card, of course, this will be the 5-leg Plex play. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the other props on the board that I had my eyes on. First off with strokes, I think with the difficult conditions tomorrow, you can consider taking quite a bit of overs. If you're going to consider taking an under, I think Sungjae Im at 70 makes a whole lot of sense. Of course, he didn't have a very good day today, but if he's going to go out there and make the cut, has to at least shoot 2 under par. If he shoots anything under par, would end up hitting the under there. You can see they moved quite a few props up, which I do like. So taking the under on any of these guys you think just shoots even or better could be a really good idea. Lee Westwood makes a lot of sense, especially because he had a decent round 1. The ball striking looked really good, at least from what I saw in person. After I left, I believe he had a few bogeys down the stretch, which is kind of unfortunate, but the ball striking was at least there for most of the round. I wouldn't touch Matthew Wolff. Again, I like him for the 1-round sample size, particularly on a par 5. But with how many water balls he hit today, with losing 6 strokes to the field putting, probably not somebody we want to take there. And I wouldn't take the under or the over on Nick Watney. I think that's a fair line. But if he was closer to 70, we'd be taking the over. I think 71.5 is fair, though. Let's go over to birdies are better. In general, there'd be a lot of unders here I'd take just because the conditions are as difficult as they are. I think the Willett and Dylan Wu, you could consider taking unders in that category. Same thing for Nick Watney. Overs I'd consider. Some of the better players in the field, like a Sungjae Im, could make a little bit of sense. You could go to somebody even, I'd say Louis, right? But he had such a bad day 1, but I'd be willing to go back to it just because the numbers are fair. 4 is just too much, to be quite frank with you. To make 5 or 6 birdies at this golf course is asking a whole lot. But to get to 4, it's a little bit more reasonable. So I'd be avoiding the guys there at 4, especially Daniel Berger at 4.5. That's pretty much, actually, I'd take the under Daniel Berger at 4.5. Yeah, exactly. It's just way too high there. But if you go a little bit towards the bottom of the board, you can see it's pretty fairly priced. A lot of these guys should probably be at 3. And taking an under at 3 birdies or better is going to be a really tough ask. 3 birdies is really not all that much. It's just 3 putts that happen to drop for these players. So probably wouldn't be looking that way. For greens in regulation and fairways hit with difficult conditions, they're probably fairly priced because we know Prize Picks tries to make fair lines so you can take the overs. Most people like taking overs, that type of thing. So they have them priced a little bit lower, but of course we also have that weather impact tomorrow. So it brings those projections a little bit closer towards what they actually have here on Prize Picks. And outside of a few notable exceptions, there isn't really anything I have my eye on. Most notably, Joaquin Niemann at 11.5 greens of regulation could make a whole lot of sense. You could consider taking a look at Horschel, who had a ton of greens of regulation today, or even Sungjae Im at 12 greens of regulation. The guy's an absolute machine with those irons. And over here with the fairways, very similar story. The guys at the top of the board, I'd probably be fading, if anything, taking the unders on. But towards the bottom of the board, there's going to be a few guys that are interesting. Brian Palmer is actually a pretty accurate driver of the golf ball, so I'd be taking that. Joaquin Niemann was also pretty accurate with the driver today. A lot of his misses were in the fringe or the intermediate, so it was like he was missing by a foot or two at the very most. And yeah, that's all I've got for the slate today, guys. That is all I've got for the round 2 picks preview. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments before you get out of here what your favorite prop on the board is. Doesn't have to be something that I covered, could be something completely off of my radar, but go ahead and put that down there in the comments before you jump on out of here. And as always, going to have you covered for Saturday and Sunday as well. So make sure to look forward to that. It'll be up as soon as I can. Of course, I'm going to these events, so got to drive home, got to freshen up before I go and make this type of content. So it'll be up as soon as I can. We'll also have showdown content for the rest of the weekend as well. Good luck with all of your prop hunting for tomorrow, and let's get this cash.